Hey everyone, Dempa here. I wanted to do something a little different for today's video. This is a Q&A/FAQ based on the questions I get on my website and emails and in my straw page. I tend to get a lot of the same questions over and over again, so rather than repeating myself, I decided to just compile everything into a comprehensive video for anyone that's new to the Denpa Archive. If you're new here, welcome! If you've been here for a while, thank you for sticking around and supporting my work. Oh, and thank you for 2,000 subscribers, that's honestly insane. I never thought that the archive would become so big. But with that aside, let's get started. What is Denpa? What does it mean? Denpa is a Japanese slang word/derogatory term used to describe people or characters who hear and see things that others can't. The word Denpa translates to electromagnetic waves or radio waves. These waves typically carry and deposit information directly into the people and or characters who believe they can perceive them. The term is also applicable to a genre of Japanese fiction surrounding characters afflicted by said Denpa waves. What makes something Denpa? Because Denpa is such a loosely defined genre at this point, there isn't much work to base a solid definition off of. But Denpa works typically feature unreliable narrators or unstable protagonists with a fractured sense of reality, emotional, physical, and or psychological isolation, obsessions or compulsions, hallucinations or delusions, conspiracies and paranoia, and dreamlike or surreal storytelling. Because the genre originated in Japan, great examples of Denpa works include Serial Experiments Lane, Sayonara wo Oshiete, Jisatsu no Tame no 101no Hoho, and Tsui no Sora. It's important to note that not every Denpa work contains all of these elements. Denpa is best understood as an atmosphere or emotional experience rather than a fixed genre. Is Denpa a genre or an aesthetic? Denpa functions more like a cultural lens than a traditional genre. It can appear in visual novels, manga, anime, music, games, films, or art. While certain visual motifs like telephone poles, empty cities, schoolgirls, static, glitches have become associated with Denpa, aesthetics alone do not make something Denpa. The defining feature is psychological unease and the destabilization of reality. Is every psychological horror story Denpa? No. While many Denpa works are psychological horror, not all psychological horror is Denpa. A psychological horror story may focus on fear, trauma, or suspense while remaining grounded in reality. Denpa stories instead emphasize subjective experience, questioning what is real, blurring internal and external worlds, and creating a lingering sense of existential discomfort. Why are visual novels so closely associated with Denpa? Visual novels are uniquely suited to depicting subjective reality. Because the player experiences the story almost entirely through a protagonist's internal perspective, developers can gradually distort narration, memory, and perception without immediately revealing what is true. Many influential Denpa works, such as Shizuku, originated in the visual novel scene, where experimental storytelling, limited budgets, and independent creators encouraged unconventional narratives that mainstream media often avoided. Why is there so much disagreement over what counts as Denpa? Because Denpa has never been formally defined. Unlike genres with clear conventions, Denpa developed organically through fan communities. Different people emphasize different aspects: psychological instability, surrealism, conspiracy, urban isolation, experimental storytelling, or emotional atmosphere. These disagreements aren't necessarily a problem, though they will make you get called a LARPer online. They're part of what makes Denpa an interesting subject to study. Why are so many Denpa works difficult to find? Many were independently produced in small print runs or released only at events like Comiket. Others were distributed on discontinued websites, physical CDs, or limited doujin releases. As a result, preservation has become an important part of Denpa culture. Archives, collectors, translators, and researchers often work together to document works before they're lost. Is Denpa only Japanese? The concept originated in Japan, but its influence has spread internationally. Examples of American Denpa works, or Denpa Americana, include Severance and American Psycho. Denpa Americana has come to describe English-language Denpa, but this term fails to acknowledge works created in English by creators in countries outside of North America. It does have a nice ring to it, though. Why does the Denpa Archive exist? The Denpa Archive exists to preserve, document, and celebrate the Denpa subculture. Many Denpa works are obscure, untranslated, or at risk of disappearing as websites vanish and physical media deteriorates. By collecting information, translations, interviews, historical context, and community contributions, the archive aims to make this corner of media history more accessible while encouraging thoughtful discussion and long-term preservation. How did the Denpa Archive start? The answer to this question is kind of embarrassing. So the Denpa Archive originally started out as a card, believe it or not. I was in college and just starting to get into the subculture, and I was frustrated by how spread out information on Dempa was across defunct websites and broken download links. I learned HTML and created a website to store all my files on, and it just kind of blew up from there. I'm happy that my efforts are being recognized, and I hope the archive is of some use to you. How did you get into Dempa? In college, I was listening to music on YouTube and came across the ending theme to Sayonara wo Oshiete. It was an absolute banger, so I listened to the official soundtrack, loved that too, and eventually read the visual novel. It was all downhill from there. How did you learn Japanese? I've been self-studying since I was 13, but I didn't get serious about it until I was around 20 or 21. The biggest help in learning Japanese was taking university classes where I was essentially forced to read, write, speak, and think in Japanese for 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. My biggest tip for learning Japanese is to go to in-person language classes daily. That'll establish your foundation and you can study kanji from there. As far as self-studying goes, Tai Kim's guide, Anki, and jisho.org have been really helpful for me. Why did you start translating? Honestly, I started translating because I had nobody to fluently speak to about my interests. It's pretty unreasonable to ask your friends to learn Japanese just so they can read an out-of-print visual novel from 2001 that they probably won't even like. I just had nobody to talk to about Dempa. So my hope was that by making the things I like more accessible to people that speak my native language, maybe I'd make some friends? It's not really working though. How did you learn to code? W3 schools and YouTube tutorials. Also, view page source is your friend. Just poke around the code of websites you like, see how they're structured, and try it for yourself. Making a NeoCities is free, and it can be really rewarding when you spend hours tinkering with a website and it finally starts to look the way you want it to. What's your biggest fear when it comes to translating? Probably being perceived as a dumbass. Because of that, I try to steer away from injecting slang or memes into my translations, though I do have a confession to make. In For Elise, Hioki says the line, "I'm only 24, but I translated that as, I'm only 24. 24 is young, because I thought it was funny and it didn't take anything away from the original context. What's your favorite visual novel? So y'all may be disappointed by this, but my favorite visual novel isn't Dempa at all. It's Dramatical Murder. I fell in love with the game over 10 years ago and I read it every summer. You should really give it a shot. So I think that about does it for all the questions I receive on a daily basis. I hope this was informative. Thanks for watching. See ya.